Hello everyone, so today our group 5 consists of Daniel, Rachel, Fatin and I Haikal will be presenting chapter 23.1 Ancestry and Features of Land Plants and chapter 23.2 Evolution of Bryophytes. We start with chapter 23.1. The learning outcomes for this chapter are we will be able to compare and contrast algae with land plants. Next one, we will be able to list the traits that enable plant to adapt life on land. And then the next one, we will be able to evaluate the differences in alternation of generation of land plants. Plants are multicellular photosynthetic eukaryotes. The characteristics of plants are they have apical tissue that produces specialized tissue. They also have alternation of generations in their life cycle. They protect the embryo. The gametangia produces gametes. And the last one, they have waxy cuticles on their leaves to prevent water loss. Here in this diagram, we can see that the land plants are classified in the supergroup Archaeplastida along with charophytes, chlorophytes and red algae. We can see that the land plants and charophytes are in the same clade. Next is the types of plants. There are 5 types of plants we will learn in this topic. The first one is the bryophytes, which are the non-vascular plants. These plants are usually low-lying plants and they live in moist environments. Next one is leucophytes and pteridophytes. These are seedless vascular plants. So these plants have vascular tissue and they typically have stem, roots and leaves. And the next one is gymnosperm and angiosperm. These are seeded vascular plants. And all of these types of plants will be explained further in the next chapters. Here is the phylogeneity of plants. We can see that the common green algae ancestor evolved and developed structures that help them to adapt life on land. First, they develop embryo protection, then they have apical growth, then they have vascular tissue. After that, they started to have microphyls or megaphyls leaves, and they have seeds, and the last one, they develop flowers. So, the ancestry of plants. Plants are thought to have evolved from freshwater green algae about 590 million years ago. And because of that, green algae and plants share some similarities in their traits. These similarities are they contain chlorophylls and accessory pigments that are involved in the photosynthesis. They store excess carbohydrates as starch, and they have cellulose in their cell walls. Besides all these similarities, there is a major difference between plants and algae, which is plants protect and nourish the resulting embryo while algae do not. Here is the diagram of the embryo of green algae which are exposed to the surrounding, while the embryo of a land plant, Capsella, is protected inside the seed. The commonality of land plants with green algae and comparison of DNA and RNA sequences suggests that land plants are most closely related to charophytes, and these charophytes are Chara and Coleucid. These are Chara and Coleucid. And the most important thing to the evolution of plants are charophytes protect the zygote. So that's all from me. The next slide will be presented by Fatin. Thank you.
Okay, for this part, I will explain what is the characteristic land adapt to land. Firstly, they are protected by a waxy covering called cuticle. This function to protect the water from loss. The next one, they also have trachea. In the plant, they are to transport the water and mineral. The next one, they also have stomata, which is the small opening in leaf. They will allow gas and water exchange. So the next one is alternation of generation. There are 2 types of multicellular body, which is diploid and haploid. In the diploid phase, we can call it sporophyte. It will develop male and female gametes, which is gametesia. So the male structure or antheridia, it will produce sperm, and the female structure, archegonia, it will produce eggs. These 2 gametes, it will combine that become zygote in diploid. So in haploid phase, the gamete producing called gametophyte. It will develop into new organism, and it will also produce spore by meiosis that called sporogyne. So this is the alternation of generation land plant. So basically plant, it will alternate the life cycle between diploid and haploid. So in diploid stage, it will contain male and female structure to produce by meiosis process. So in the mitosis, it will occur in the male and female structure to produce gametocyte. So the gametocyte, they are haploid. It will also produce these two gametes by mitosis. So the fertilization of these two gametes, it will also produce the diploid stage, the diploid zygote that then develop into new sporophyte. Okay, this is the dominant generation. In the plant, there can be gametophyte or sporophyte. So mostly early plant like mosses, the gametophyte is dominant, and the other plant like ferns, the sporophyte is dominant. So in the history of land plant, the vascular system only involved in sporophyte. Therefore, the shift of sporophyte dominance is adaptation to land. The gametophyte become microscopic when sporophyte gains in dominance, and the gametophyte will become dependent on sporophyte. So, based from this picture, we can see the gametophyte will become microscopic and the sporophyte will become dependent.
Hello everyone, I will be presenting to you chapter 23.2, which is the evolution of bryophytes. So the learning outcomes of the chapter, you should be able to list the traits of bryophytes, compare 3 groups of bryophytes, and identify the role of each generation in the life cycle of a bryophyte. So what are bryophytes? So bryophytes were the first plants that was able to colonize land. They're non-vascular plants. They lack xylem and phloem. They're low-lying plants, meaning they are found in very low areas. They are small and flowerless plant, and they require or they prefer moist conditions for survival. So we move on to the diagram of a bryophyte structure. So if we analyze the structure, it's divided into 2 parts, the sporophyte and the gametophyte. So be aware that bryophyte is the only type of plant where the gametophyte is dominant. And on top of that, bryophytes lacks true roots, so they have structures called rhizoids instead. So remember, when you see a bryophyte and you see something that looks like a root, it's actually called rhizoids. We move on to a few characteristics of bryophytes and adaptations on land. So these characteristics are actually the few things that adapt them to live on land. Firstly, bodies are covered with cortical layer. So with cortical layer, bryophytes are able to reduce possibility of water loss. They also have apical tissue. So what is apical tissue does? It would produce complex tissues. We go to diffusion. So bryophytes use diffusion to transport water and organic nutrients. But why do they do this? Because they lack xylem and phloem. So there's no xylem and phloem to transport water and organic nutrients, so they would use diffusion instead. But a drawback of using diffusion, it would cause limited growth of the plant. We go to methods of reproduction. They could reproduce both ways, either sexually or asexually. We now move on to the sexual reproduction of bryophytes. So bryophytes, they contain flagellated sperms in their aetheridia. These sperms would swim to eggs located in the archegonia. Flagellated sperms need a body of water as means of transport. We now move on to the asexual reproduction of bryophytes. So they would reproduce through vegetative reproduction. The most simple and common way is by fragmentation. So what is fragmentation? By means a piece of bryophyte structure would break off and land on a suitable environment for them to regrow. So this picture here illustrates how bryophytes asexually reproduce. So we go to the types of bryophytes. There are 3 types: the liverworts, the hornworts, and the mosses. There are 2 types of liverworts: the thallus liverwort and the leafy liverwort. For the thallus liverworts, they have flattened bodies called thallus. These thallus are branching and ribbon-like. For leafy liverworts, however, they superficially resemble mosses. They are the most common type of liverwort. So if you look into the structure of a leafy liverwort, they somehow look like leaves. We go to the characteristics of liverworts. Most liverworts have lobes. These lobes look like small pores. They are founded on the thallus of the liverwort. So why do we call them liverwort? It is because these lobes somehow resemble lobes on an actual liver organ. Thus, why we call them as liverworts. Liverworts could produce both sexually or asexually. For asexual reproduction, they have something called gyma or gamma cups that will detach from the liverwort and start a new plant. For sexual reproduction, they have both antheridia to produce sperm and arcogonia to produce eggs. Moving on are the hornworts. Hornworts, they resemble tiny green horns. They have thin rosae and ribbon-like thallus. Diameters would range from 1 cm to 5 cm. A condition needed for survival for hornworts is they live on trees. Some of them live on trees, but most of them do prefer to live in moist and well-shaded area. Go to hornwort's special adaptation. So hornworts has a symbiotic relationship with cyanobacteria. So first of all, hornworts do photosynthesize, but in cases where they could not proceed with photosynthesis, they could also fix nitrogen in the air. How? This is due to the symbiotic relationship with cyanobacteria. The cyanobacteria living in the hornworts would fix nitrogen, meaning ammonia to nitrates and nitrates to nitrates. Thus, nitrates could be used by the hornworts for further processing of energy.
So, I would like to talk about the mosses, which are the largest among non-vascular plants. There are 3 examples of mosses, which are peat mosses, granite mosses, and true mosses. So, mosses are really important as they can help to improve the water capacity of soil, and it can also be used as dressing on battlefields. And these are the 2 conditions of mosses during the sunny day and rainy day. As we can see from the picture here, during the sunny day it shriveled, turning brown, and look completely dead. As in the rainy day it will turn green and return to its metabolic activities. So these are the 2 main structures of mosses, which are sporophyte and gametophyte. Gametophyte is also known as protonema. The gametophyte will produce leafy shoots, which will bear antheridia or archegonia, and it will also sprout the rhizoids. The antheridia is also the male gametophyte, which will produce haploid flagellated sperm, and this archegonia is the female gametophyte, which will produce haploid egg. As for the sporophyte, they will have food, stalk, and capsule. Capsule is the place where sporangium is contained, and this food we can't really see it from here as it is enclosed in archegonia. So this is the life cycle for mosses. So I would like to start from here, which is the protonema. Protonema is the gametophyte, as I mentioned in the slide before. It will produce the outright leafy shoots and sprout rhizoids. These leafy shoots can either bear antheridia or archegonia. Antheridia will contain sperm, and the archegonia will contain egg. So during the fertilization, the sperm will swim to the egg to produce this zygote, and this structure is the archegonia. So the zygote will grow into the sporophyte, and later the sporophyte will be matured, and it will produce the stalk and this capsule. And the capsule contains sporangium, and in this sporangium it contains spores. So during the meiosis, the spores can be released from the sporangium to be dispersed, and these spores can repeat the life cycle of mosses again. And I would like you to bear in mind that these spores, which is produced through meiosis, is haploid, and when do they become diploid is that after they are undergoing this fertilization, when the sperm fertilizes with the egg and produce the zygote, and this zygote is diploid. So, about the similarity between the liverworts, hornworts, and mosses. They are all bryophytes, non-vascular plants with no true roots, stem, or leaves, and they can reproduce through sexually or asexually. If through sexually, they will reproduce through this gametophyte, and the gametophyte is dominant. If through asexually, they will produce using this gyma present for fermentation, and sporophyte is present, and also the rhizoids are present. Hi everyone, so now I'm going to show you the model for a liverwort. So this is the model that I have made. So as we can see from here, this is the hair-like extension known as rhizoid. Rhizoid is very important as it acts as anchors and it helps to absorb water from the soil. Next we have male gametophyte, female gametophyte, and this gyma, and this sputum bodies is known as thallus. Next, gyma cup. So this is the two gyma cups on the thallus. As we can see from inside of the gyma cup, it has gyma. Gyma will help in asexual reproduction of liverwort. It can be detached from the thallus and grow into the new plant. Next, antheridia. So this is the antheridia where sperm can be produced. So how to differentiate between the structure of antheridia and archegonia is that antheridia has this shape. So this shape look like, and it's pointing outwards. Next we have archegonia. So archegonia have umbrella shape, and from here the egg can be produced and fertilization between egg and sperm can occur, and hence it can grow into the tiny sporophytes. So that's all from me.